The scent of jasmine was the first thing I noticed. It was her favorite perfume, a scent that used to make my heart flutter like a teenager's. Now it just felt cloying, a sticky sweetness masking something rotten underneath. She walked in a little too bouncy, a little too bright-eyed for someone who'd supposedly just finished a 12-hour emergency shift at the hospital. "Honey, I'm home," she chirped with that same fake cheerfulness I'd come to dread. "My name is Thomas, and my wife is M, or I suppose was. We'd been married for 6 years of shared Netflix binges, quiet dinners, and weekend hikes. Or at least that's what I thought. It's funny how a life you've carefully constructed, brick by loving brick, can crumble so spectacularly with just a few cracks in the foundation." Amelia always claimed to work long shifts. It was part of her medical job. Lately, it seemed there were more emergencies than usual. It started with little things, I guess. Late-night calls she'd take in the other room, always lowering her voice, explaining them away as a particularly difficult patient or a worried colleague. The way she'd recoil slightly when I reached for her hand. A barely perceptible flinch that nevertheless set off alarm bells in the recesses of my mind. And then there was the perfume. Jasmine. Always jasmine. A perfume that felt more like a mask lately than anything. Tonight, however, was different. She came back not just smelling of jasmine, but almost vibrating with a peculiar energy. "Long day," she said, giving me a quick peck on the cheek, the kiss landing off-center, more like a glancing blow. "You okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. I felt a knot tightening in my stomach, that familiar dread rising. "Tired but fine," she said. "What did you have for dinner?" she asked with a smile. I watched her hang her purse, the same bag she'd been using religiously. "Nothing much," I said, my gaze drawn to the living room wall. She followed my stare. There, in bold letters written in a color I recognized instantly, the deep red of her favorite lipstick, was a single word. Liar. It was painted messily but precisely on the wall, each letter screaming a truth I'd only begun to understand. The word wasn't a painting. It felt like a physical punch, a hammer blow to my chest. Her face went slack, her eyes widened, her lips parted in a silent gasp. The color drained from her, leaving her skin paper white, the brightness replaced with stark terror. What is this?" she stammered, her voice a shaky whisper, all the pep gone. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked to the side table, picked up her purse, and with a decisive pull, I dumped the contents onto the floor. A tumble of tampons, receipts, loose change, and amongst it all, nestled like a poisonous insect, was a second phone. The old kind. A simple flip phone without any access to our connected world. I picked it up, unlocked it easily with the last 4 digits of our wedding date. A code we used so she wouldn't forget it, I guess. The message log was brimming with exchanged messages that seethed with raw intimacy and a level of connection she never shared with me. The names? Mostly just J. She must have thought she was clever enough. I held up the phone. "Care to explain this?" I asked calmly. My voice didn't waver. All the rage that had been bubbling inside had turned into a glacial, focused anger. Amelia started to cry. Great big crocodile tears. Her hands flew to cover her face like a child caught stealing candy. She was a terrible actress, always had been. "It's not what you think," she sobbed. A classic refrain that did nothing to alleviate the suffocating pain constricting my chest. "I think it's pretty clear, Amelia," I said, each word laced with cutting sharpness. "A liar, a cheat, an adulterer. Would you believe the next 10 minutes were a blur?" She cried, begged, tried to rationalize. A hulking concoction of excuses poured from her mouth. A deluge of desperate justifications that washed over me with their uselessness. My focus, my mind, had left her months ago and found something akin to steely resolve. I picked up the phone, thumbing through recent calls. "Who is Jay?" I asked calmly, as though this was all very casual. A light conversation over morning coffee. Amelia's sobs took a stutter. She didn't want to give me this, but she had lost all of her power. Her words became timid whimpers. "His name is James," she barely whispered. "James," I repeated. turning on my heel to head toward the door. Well, James has a surprise in store as well. I grabbed my car keys, leaving her there amidst the wreckage of her deceit. As I got into my car, I called Jay at the number saved as recent on her flip phone. Hello, this is James. Who is this? Hey James, it's Thomas, Amelia's husband. She is at my house as we speak. Why don't you swing by? I want us to get to know each other face to face. I spoke as plainly as I could. I knew this had to have thrown him off. It was unexpected, to say the least. He stammered, his voice shaking. I hung up the phone. It wasn't long before I heard a car pull into our driveway. I was outside now, the cool night air did me good. But it also allowed me a better view of the sorry excuse of a man emerging from the driver's seat. James. He was older than me, maybe in his early 40s, with a receding hairline and a slight paunch. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was the man she had thrown us both away for? He stepped toward me tentatively, an air of swagger turning into hesitation as he registered the coldness in my eyes. I didn't know she was married, he started, the lame excuse hanging in the air. I smiled at that, a grim, humorless twist of my lips. I'm sure she was very honest with you then. Did you happen to notice all the photos we had together in our house? Or did she keep that part hidden, like a secret treasure? Before he could answer, the door to our house opened. Amelia stumbled out, tears streaming down her face. Thomas, please, this can all be explained. I ignored her, turning my attention back to James. Tell me, James, what did Amelia tell you about her emergency shifts? I asked, the word emergency dripping with sarcasm. His face paled. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't, I said. Just as Amelia doesn't know that I installed cameras in the house in case some trouble might emerge. I pulled out my phone, displaying the live feed of the living room. A shock. James and Amelia, cowering behind her own deceit. His face now mirrored the stark terror that Amelia's had just before. The evidence was there, visible, impossible to deny. This wasn't some dramatic misunderstanding. This was a cold, calculated betrayal. It was happening in real time. The next moments played out like a bad soap opera, but it felt like the most natural, cathartic moment of my entire life. James denied it all, looking as pathetic as I thought he could. I threw a punch. It was the hardest punch I've ever thrown. James was on the floor in agony. Amelia cried and yelled. I screamed and ranted. It was chaos. The entire street must have heard us. Then I took a breath. I calmed myself and collected all the evidence in my hands, the message logs, the camera footage, and a detailed report. A full report on every deceitful detail. Every moment they lied. All the time she pretended. She didn't only have one flip phone. She had a second. And a third. Phones where she communicated with other friends. I looked at them both with pure loathing. This wasn't rage anymore. This was utter disdain. Get out of my life, I said coldly, my voice as hard as granite. And take the trash you love so dearly with you. She is all yours now. Amelia fell to the floor, begging again. James looked stunned, then just got up and grabbed her hand, half dragging her. They both walked to the car that he had used to arrive, and they looked at me with a mixture of terror, shame, and resentment. And I simply walked inside. The sound of the car peeling away from my driveway echoed in my empty heart. It was over. I watched them both drive away, a hollow victory, a stark reminder of everything I had lost. There was nothing but silence, a deafening quiet in a house that used to be filled with the laughter and joy of my now former marriage. I picked up the remote and turned on the TV. The sound of some sitcom, something to help me cope, for now, to pretend, for at least a moment, that nothing had changed. I grabbed a beer and sat on the couch, surveying the scene. My eye caught the word liar, a last reminder of a betrayal. I looked at the message on the wall, and despite the devastation and heartbreak I still felt, for a split second, I allowed myself a small, victorious smile. I got to control her downfall. I was always the kindest and nicest until I wasn't. This wasn't supposed to be the way things went for her. I was very precise with what I exposed. I wasn't just angry. This was much more than just anger. She didn't deserve to continue thinking she could live this life and get away with it. She would have had a life sentence for lying if it had been up to me.